Welcome to Dungeon Pages. Little playthrough here for you. So the first thing you do when you start playing is you choose which of the first 4 small dungeons to explore first. I'm going to have Zafin explore the cave first, so I will grab my good die, which my character starts with, and the 1 evil die indicated by this icon at the top of the dungeon. And I roll them to create my dice pool. I end up with a 3 and a 5, and the first thing I have to check is to see if monsters attack. So if I was in a dungeon that had 2 or more evil dice, I'd have to look for wandering monsters. If you roll doubles on evil dice, you trigger the wandering monster, which causes you 1 damage. Beyond that, you need to check if any of your evil dice exceed the trigger value of monsters on the sheet. So Crypt Guardians will trigger on a 5 or higher, and those are the only monsters that are in this dungeon. So I look to see what the penalty is, and in this case they just deal me 1 damage. Crypt Guardians have no other special ability. So to track that damage, I cross out one of my starting stamina. And then I move on to the regular part of the game where I can assign my dice to spaces within range of the door. So because Zafin starts with an oak staff, which has a range of 1, and that range is measured in up, down, left, and right, I need to first place something either on this space or this, which are considered range 1. Diagonal is not. So I will put a 3 on this first space, and now obviously I'm further into the dungeon. I can count my range from that space or from the door. And because I have a 5, which is high enough to cause damage to the Crypt Guardian, I will place my second die value, the evil die, 5 here. So we always have to place all of our dice values, both good and evil dice. And like I said, Crypt Guardians have a defense of 3 plus, so that means that anything 3 or higher placed adjacent to that monster causes them 1 damage. The Crypt Guardian has a stamina of 2, so it will take 1 more of these numbers adjacent to the monster to finish him off. And by defeating that monster, I will score 1 experience point. The other way to score experience points is to completely fill in columns, and by filling in, that would mean in this case any of these blank spaces. The walls are already considered filled in, so this is an easier column to score 1 experience point at the end of this dungeon. Now you can only collect experience points if you create a sequential path. So from the door to the chest needs to be 3, 4, 5, 6, or 3, 3, 3, 3, or even 3, 2, 1, 2. As long as the numbers are the same number, or 1 up or 1 down, that's considered sequential. And that path can actually move through the dungeon if there was actually different ways to get there. You don't have to go in a straight line, as long as you're creating a path that's an unbroken chain. If I was to choose or be forced to, because of dice roll, to create a path to the chest that was not sequential, I would still keep any items that I collected in the dungeon, but I would not score any experience points. So obviously experience points are key to upgrading your character. You're going to want to do that. Okay, so now we're on to turn number 2. Roll the dice. Again, I trigger the Crypt Guardian, so I'm going to take another point of damage. And I have a 5 and a 1. I'm sort of wishing that I had put my 5 here, because that would have helped me create my sequential path. So instead, I'm going to need to sort of throw away some dice results over here on this side path so that I don't block myself in. So to kick that off, I will, again, considering I have a range of 1, I can go from the door, I can go from this 3 that I've already created. I will throw a 5 here and a 1 here. To collect this coin, I'm going to need 2 spaces with a number that is the same. So if I put a 5 here, I already have a 5 here, I'd be able to collect this coin. that's what I'm thinking about as I place these markings into the spaces. Okay, on to turn number 3. All right, I am really getting backed in. I will go, at least I can get a coin. So I will put a 6 here and a 5 here, which scores me this coin. Now coins can be spent to modify a die roll up or down 1. I also took an additional point of damage at the start of the turn for rolling that 5 from the Crypt Guardian. He's really beating me up. Hopefully on this next roll I can get a 4 or a 2 or a 3 so that I can keep going on my path. But as I was mentioning, I can use this coin to help modify a die roll if need be. Alright, so turn number 4. There we go. So without even having to use my coin, first off I did get hit by the Crypt Guardian, so let's take that damage. I'm going to go 4 and 5. So I'm 1 away from the chest. Now if I was to fill that space in on my next turn, I'd immediately leave the dungeon. I don't necessarily want to do that yet if I don't have to. I am taking a beating, but if I can get over here and take the Crypt Guardian out, then I'm pretty much set for collecting coins and healing potion, which would be pretty critical, and experience points. So having done that, let's move on to turn 5. And this time I do not trigger the Crypt Guardian. Crypt Guardians only trigger on a 5 or higher, so we're good there. And you may be wondering about these doubles. These do not trigger the Wandering Monster because Wandering Monster only triggers on evil dice. Okay, so I get to move right on to the player turn, and with 2 4s, I don't really have to worry about a sequential path when it comes to moving through the dungeon now, just when I come to the chest here. So I'm going to use these 4s like so, and move on to turn 6. Unfortunately, I did get hit with the Crypt Guardian just one more time, so that's okay though, because I am going to finish him off. I will immediately drop my 5 here and cross out the Crypt Guardian. Experience points can be all tallied at the end of a dungeon when you hit the chest, so you don't need to do that yet. With this remaining 4, which worked nicely, I drop that here, and just like the coin, because these 2 numbers adjacent to the item match, I'm allowed to collect this healing potion. And you may as well go ahead and activate it right away. That fills in this slot, and I've effectively gained 3 more stamina. Okay, and now I can move on to my next turn without worrying about the Crypt Guardian hitting me. The only thing that's really a danger is if for some reason I can't fill in this last space to exit the dungeon with a sequential path, I could sort of lose all the experience points that I'm hoping to gain. But I'm in a pretty good spot with a coin. I'm going to try to get that other coin and fill in as many of these columns for experience points as I can. Okay, so 3s. Looking pretty good over here, so I think I will make sure that this column gets filled in. Come down here. Three and a 5 is perfect. I'm going to put a 5 here, 3 here, and collect that coin. I have all the items in the dungeon, so I can either fill in these 2 spaces for that column's experience point, or I can head right out the door and just call that one good. Alright, 4 and a 6. Man, I am rolling so well that I think I might just go for broke and drop 6 here and 4 here. Alright, let's see if I'm going to need the coin to save myself. I should mention that coins can also be used just for a straight reroll, or they can be used to modify a die +1, -1. Okay, so I sort of did this to myself. It's a good example. Now, because I did not roll a 4, 5, or 6, I have to do something to modify these dice to utilize the space and create a sequential path. So a 4 would cost me 2 coins, and you can use both coins on a single die, but I can also use Zaffin's ability to sacrifice a good die, which removes it from the pool, meaning it won't get written down, and choose another die that is 3 or less and double it. And there's my 4. If I still had a die left over, but I was exiting the dungeon, that's okay. You don't have to write every die. Once you fill in that last space, you actually have to leave the dungeon immediately. Okay, so gaining experience. I like to fill in these dots just to sort of track what experience I received from completing a column. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I had not collected this coin, it still would have been considered complete. Items are considered filling the space, as are walls and chests and doors and monsters. So even if I hadn't killed that monster, I could have counted this if all 4 of these spaces were filled in. Okay, so there's 6 experience points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I defeated this monster, which gives me 1 experience point. So I maxed out that dungeon for 7, which leaves me just 1 short of gaining a extra good die. So I should be able to get that after I complete my next dungeon if I make a sequential path. And again, that sequential path was 3, 4, 5, 4. It doesn't have to be all ascending numbers or descending numbers, as long as they're 1 away from each other or the same number. Okay, so the prize that I can choose, though, for completing this dungeon, again, because I created a sequential path, is either a weapon or a relic. And these weapons or relics do have requirements in XP. So experience and XP interchangeable. Under the weapon category, I already have an oak staff, but I have the option of picking up a short sword, which has an experience cost of 6. It has a range of 1, but it can also hit diagonally, which can come in very handy. If I look to relics, unfortunately the cheapest relic is a Ring of Good Fortune at 9 XP. Everything else is much more expensive. So I will take the short sword, and if I could have afforded both, I would have had to pick one or the other. Okay, and you don't cross out any experience or anything. It's just a threshold you must meet, and that's it. Now you're on to picking the next dungeon to explore. I'll pause the video here